Cheers, Ben.
Prost. Wait, that's German. I don't know what cheers is in Russian.
Vodka. I don't know.
I like that. From now on, anytime somebody says cheers, I'm going to be like, vodka.
Yeah, I guarantee as soon as we post this episode, Jake's going to be like, it's fucking this word.
Yeah. You're wrong. Way to trash my heritage.
Well, folks, welcome to We Love the State. This is the state-sanctioned podcast. I am your host, Andy Coons. Doing pretty good. And over here on the other side of the table, back in the garage, is my beautiful, illustrious co-host, Ben DeJong. How you doing, Ben?
Doing good. Glad to be back in the old garage. I don't know. We're going to have to come up with, I think, a name for this. I mean, I suppose we could just call it the garage, but like, I don't know, the Legion of Doom or something, like something a little bit more.
We have to come up with like a really like government-y sounding name for it. Like,
welcome to the deep state. I like that.
That's what if we ever make like a We Love the State porno, we're calling it Deep State.
Deep State.
Yeah.
There will be some deepness, but it's going to be a lot of state penetration.
It'll be heavily regulated.
Yeah, heavily regulated. Yes. Only a millimeter of
all the proper
per hour
forms will be filled out.
We will be audited, and you know what? The Fed may audit us anytime, so who knows?
Yeah. Just waiting on that.
Oh, can't wait.
I'm thinking we have to call it the garage, but what the federal government would call it, So like
the deep garage.
No, like like federally the
yeah, you got to put federal on it, like the Federal Reserve. It's
like federal car parking station or something like that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like make it sound like a government, like a dumb government building.
Yeah, with a good acronym. There's got to be a 3-letter acronym to it. So, all right, stay tuned. You know what? If you want to know what we're going to call the garage next episode,
yes,
we'll have a new title.
We'll figure this out.
And if you'd like to throw in some ideas, feel free to add some comments because we don't get enough of those. Yeah. I always like to hear actual comments because that, for me, I think that gives actual feedback. Because we're not big enough to get a ton of bots or Russian hackers. You got to be careful of those Russian hackers. We are using their they're
the only reason that Trump got elected.
Exactly. So, but I know that actual comments are always great because we would love to get the feedback. We're still in the kind of the trial and error phase of the podcast.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I like the idea of that being kind of a standard thing for podcasts because I'm a big fan of change.
Yeah.
Because it's inevitable. So you might as well have some control over it.
Yeah. That's why I voted for Obama twice.
Hope and change. Yeah. And you know what?
First time was for all the hope. The second time was for all the change.
And we were left with some change. So win-win.
Yeah. Well, white people and black people are back to hating each other. So thanks, Obama.
Yeah. You really knocked it out of the park on the change piece.
Did you watch that documentary, Uncle Tom?
It's from... No. Was that on Netflix?
No. It's you can find it on YouTube. It's from Larry. What the fuck is his name?
This isn't something that Dave Chappelle did with
no.
Ku Klux Klan, because that was hilarious. If I could watch an entire documentary of a black racist
of Clayton Bigsby,
man, that was just pure gold. Something else you could probably never get away with today.
Is it Clayton or is it Cletus?
Something like that. It started with a C.
Yeah,
and in a racist.
Is the funniest sketch ever written of all time.
So good, and it hits everything you want in comedy. Like it crosses multiple lines. It makes you a little uncomfortable, but at the same time you're gonna laugh whether you're uncomfortable. I mean,
for sure.
Rest in peace, The Chappelle Show.
Yeah, that's on HBO Max, I think.
Is it? I know that.
Or no, I think it's on Netflix.
Well, I don't know Netflix, I think, was put it out, and then Dave was like not okay with it because he felt it was his baby. but I think they bought the rights to it, but then he kind of called them up and said, I don't want this on the platform because it's mine. And they took it down, because I do believe that was kind of a big stepping point for goodwill between him and Netflix.
Yeah.
Which I think kind of allowed, the new specials to come out. So,
I mean, it really goes to show that there are a lot of differing points of view at Netflix, because I mean that was a really cool thing for them to do, and I mean they've defended Dave Chappelle, all those people that are like, if you don't get rid of Dave Chappelle, we're walking out, and they're like, okay.
Yeah, well, they're putting out Bill Burr. I mean, they're not afraid, and
but at the same time, they're putting out like love stories about men getting pregnant and shit like that.
I think that's the overcompensation for the fact they have Dave Chappelle. So okay. I think it's more like
we're gonna put your shitty Japanese movie about this dude getting pregnant, but we also get to put out Dave Chappelle shit.
Right. That justifies the Dave Chappelle stuff.
I want to see the budget for this. For the woke shit that they put out, because I bet you it is minuscule. If that's what it is, if it's a we'll put your dumb woke bullshit up, but we also get to put the stuff that actually is going to make us some money. I bet you the woke shit has a nothing budget.
I would hope so. I mean, we looked at Marvel with the Eternals that just got destroyed in the box office. I don't know
that movie sucked.
What they spent on it, but like. The first trailer, I didn't even get through the trailer, and I was like, no thanks.
Like nobody knew who they were, but here's the thing: nobody knew who the Guardians of the Galaxy were either. True. But James Gunn made the Guardians of the Galaxy. Like he put those names in every household in America, because he told an amazing story with these weird oddball characters that you'd be like, these people exist. A talking tree exists in the MCU, and he made everybody fall in love with them,
But I think he loved him too, because I think you can see his passion for the comic series. And I think that plays a lot with movies, especially that are based on whether it's books or comics, it's the directors who treat them with reverence, like they really respect the originals. We can look at like the new Lord of the Rings on Amazon. It's like clearly not only were the writers of the new series, I mean, they may have been somewhat of a fan of the originals, but it's almost like they feel like they have to course correct for the movies.
Yeah.
And therefore
have you been watching it?
I haven't, but I've been just listening to a lot of reviews on YouTube.
So I have a theory about this.
Did you watch any of them?
I have been watching.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
What do you think?
I'm only 3 episodes in. All right. And so maybe it comes along later, but what I heard is that Gandalf was gay, I heard Elrond was gay, and I heard Sauron was gay, which all 3 of those characters being gay doesn't make sense, doesn't serve the story whatsoever.
Yeah.
And so I went into it fully ready to get a whole bunch of woke bullshit, and I have not seen anything that's woke so far. If the wokeness that they're talking about is Galadriel being the main character, well, she's a fucking elvish queen. Like, obviously she's been alive for thousands of years, like she's got a hit. She's canon, there's a lot of canon characters in this. And I haven't seen, like, there's a couple of black elves. There's a couple of black elves. There's a black dwarf, and it's like, all right, like we can't be so allergic to black people being in white people shit, like
right. Well, and to me, like, as long as you're not trying to really push that, it's just, it is what it is. I don't mind that at all. It's when they make a big deal of it. Then and they try to like put it into the narrative of the story that it's a person of whatever sexual orientation or
I haven't seen a single elf or a single dwarf, any of these black elves or dwarves go, if that person looks like me, like nobody said anything like that so far. And so me personally, I haven't seen anything woke.
How is it as far as the story goes?
I've really enjoyed it. I've really enjoyed it. All right. It gets into
some of the backstories,
some of the lore that you never hear about in the movies. It shows the Grey Havens. Well, it shows people going into the Grey Havens. It doesn't actually show the Grey Havens, but it talks about the Silmarils that were created, and it's like it's a time period that has not been written about, that Tolkien hasn't written about.
Well, I think it was based on some writings that were all put together by descendants of Tolkien, like I think
kids.
Almost like his storyboards for the books.
Mm-hmm.
So I think a lot of it was just notes that he scribbled down about certain backstories that didn't make the original books.
Right.
So I think it's loosely based on Tolkien's writings.
Mm-hmm.
They're just kind of a mess.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea is, they're trying to take what he did create and expand on it, but still try to.
Well, there's racial tension in Middle Earth, like in the books. There's racial tension between elves and dwarves,
right?
Between man and fucking
but would
everybody
you call
else.
that racial tension, or would you call that because they're just completely different? It's not necessarily. I mean, it is.
Well,
race.
they're called like the race of elves, the race of men, the race of dwarves. And so there are those sort of racial tensions that exist in Middle Earth, and that's canon, especially between the elves and the dwarves. That's canon.
Yeah, that is very true.
Yeah. So
I do remember that.
So here's my theory about this. All right. Because if my theory is true, I gotta hand it to the fucking wokes out there. They pulled a good fucking move. All right. So
I can't wait to hear this.
So for months and months, I've been hearing this new Lord of the Rings show is going to be so woke. Oh my God, I can't believe they would disgrace Tolkien like this, blah, 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 blah. Hearing all this stuff. All these characters are gay. All these characters are trans or non-binary or some weird shit like that, And so I went into this being like, all right, where's all the woke shit?
Very low expectations.
Very low expectations. All right.
Do you think that's like part of their marketing?
I think that they purposefully put out misinformation so that way the reactionaries, the right-wing anti-woke, maybe not necessarily right-wing, but just anti-woke reactionaries would grapple onto that and rip it to shreds and be like, look at this show, look at what they fucking did to that, blah, 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 blah. And so the people that go in with those expectations, they go in thinking, I'm going to hear about all this stuff, and then we see a couple of black elves and a couple of black dwarves, and that's it. And nothing else. And everything else is just straight fun entertainment, orcs and swords and elves and magic and shit like that.
Yeah.
And if that's the case, that is a genius strategy on the side of the wokes, because now what they've done is completely discredited all these anti-woke reactionaries.
That would be a very fine line to walk from, I think, from a marketing perspective, because how do you set expectations low but not turn people off so they don't even watch it?
Yeah.
Like, that's a hard line, because I totally agree. Like, I could see just releasing certain clips that, might kind of like piss people off, but some, bad publicity is still publicity.
Yeah.
So you get a lot of chatter on, all of these, reviews, shows on Amazon. You get a lot of people talking about controversy. And then when the final product's released, it's really not controversial at all.
Well,
so
I think the strategy in this is not in the Rings of Power. It's in the next project. You know what I mean? So, like, say that I'm one of these anti-woke reactionaries and you're just average Joe, wanting to watch something, just wanting to be entertained. And I'm like, don't watch Rings of Power. It's bullshit. It's all woke. It's all people who hate white people, who hate straight white males. It's all this stuff. And then you're like, well, I'm going to try it to see how bad it is.
What do you think, like, I just finished watching Star Trek Strange New Worlds.
Well, hold on. Let me finish this.
Well, I'll just wrap it back. So
no, Ben.
Star Trek Discovery, like, the first two seasons had their problems, but they really didn't go woke, I think, until the third season. So I'm wondering if something like this, if it's pull people in on the first season and then start really pushing the message later down the line.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, that's what it could be. And so whenever I said that the tactic isn't about Rings of Power, what I have to say is the tactic isn't about Rings of Power season 1.
Right.
You know, it's not about this current project, you know. But if I'm telling you that Rings of Power is so woke and it's all the stuff that we hate and it's all the stuff that hates you, you know,
right.
And then you go and you try it, and maybe it's because you want to hate watch it, maybe it's because you want to see for yourself, you know, or maybe it's because it's still Lord of the Rings though, and you go in and you're ready to put up your guard and you see that you have no reason to, then the next time that I come out and I say, don't watch season 2 of blah, 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 because they're going to do this, and this, you're going to be like, whatever, man. And you're going to watch it anyway.
Yeah.
And so, and tying on to that, Randy Quaid, All-American nut job, he said something about Yellowstone, the show Yellowstone, and always pay attention to the crazies, because a broken clock is right twice.
I went down the Randy Quaid rabbit hole a ways back. And
so he's a lot like Alex Jones, where most of the shit that he says is just whack job nonsense, but every once in a while he really fucking hits on something, you know? Or maybe he hits on something, but he says it in such a weird, dumb way that you have to like decode it, and you're like, oh, you know, like Jeffrey Epstein or turning the frogs gay. Like the whole turning the frogs gay thing, like there were actual experiments going on where they chemically forced frogs to change their gender,
right?
Know? And he just said it in a dumb Alex Jones way.
It's sensationalizing it.
Yeah.
It's very clickbaity.
Yeah. So I look at Randy Quaid the same way. You know, he was talking about the show Yellowstone, and conservatives love the show Yellowstone because it's a show that makes it look like, hey, we're catering to you guys. He goes, I know the guys that make this show. They're not on your team. It's a tactic. They do this all the time. They start a show that placates to right-wingers, and then they slowly drift left, and it gets just further and further and further and further left. And so look at a season 1.
It's a tactic.
It's a tactic. And so I'm thinking, so we know shit like that exists in Hollywood. And so like, that's why going back to Rings of Power, I'm like, this could just be a better tactic. This could just be the next evolutionary step in this tactic, is discredit the naysayers, and then you have free reign to usher in what you want.
Right.
You know,
it's I can see it a little bit in the series The Boys. Did you ever watch any of that on Amazon?
Oh yeah,
so good. But you know, like last season, they were very clearly trying to push Homelander into this Trump person, and it honestly, there was I think a little bit of it backfired, because it was almost more, I mean, they definitely were pushing a leader who was very totalitarianistic.
Yeah.
But I see that way more on the left than I do on the right.
Yeah.
So it almost backfired in the fact that, and maybe that's just because of my perception and like how I'm viewing it, but I saw him, that figure, of more representing the left than I saw him representing Trump.
Yeah.
Which was, it's kind of funny in the fact that they're trying to paint somebody. It's very similar into, what is that, gaslighting, where, you know, it's like what I'm doing.
That's exactly what it is
what I'm trying to get you to think that you're doing.
Well, the scene that immediately comes to mind is from the season finale. We just finished season 3, right?
Yep.
Okay, so the season 3 finale, there's that dude who was Mother's Milk, worst fucking superhero name ever, Mother's Milk's daughter's stepdad.
Yep.
You know, and he's at that Homelander rally where somebody, first of all, like, let's call things what they are. Somebody fucking assaults a child with a rock, okay? And then Homelander looks at that person that just threw a fucking rock at his son's head and laser beams him, okay? Which, I'm sorry, if somebody throws a rock at my child's head,
I'd do the same thing.
If a grown-ass adult was like, fuck you, and threw a rock and hit my kid, I'd blow their fucking head off, you know? So anyway, but that's besides the point. Homelander laser beams him, his head explodes, and the one stepdad goes, "Yeah!" And it's like, I saw that and I was like, that is the left. That's not the right at all. That's the left. That's the fucking left right now. And look at the stories of people, and like, neither Ben or I are Trump supporters. We don't like Trump. Trump had a lot of problems, you know, but I've always been able to separate fucking, the ideologues from the people who support them, you know?
Right.
And I try to do that with left-wing ideologues too, you know, like Hillary Clinton supporters.
Like, when are they right and when are they wrong?
Well, it's like Hillary Clinton supporters are not Hillary Clinton, you know?
Right.
Like,
separating the people from the movement.
Exactly. You know, you have to do that with Trump supporters also. Trump supporters are not Trump. And so, but that's what the left is not able to do. These left-wingers are not able to do that. They're not able to separate Trump from Trump supporters. And it's like, whenever I saw that scene, I was like, that is way more true of the left than Trump supporters. There are no stories out there about Trump supporters pulling Hillary supporters or fucking Biden supporters out of their cars at an intersection and beating the shit out of them. But guess what? 2016, that happened to Trump supporters.
Right.
More than once. Like, Trump supporters were assaulted left and right. You know, there were people who were seriously injured.
God forbid you wear a MAGA hat, and you will be threatened at the very minimum.
Yeah. But the other thing is like the left-wing reactionaries, they can hear us talking about this, and it doesn't matter that we just said we're not Trump supporters. Right. It doesn't matter that we just said there are a lot of problems with Trump, you know? They see us defending Trump supporters and they're like, oh, they're Trump supporters. Right. You know?
Yeah, the group mentality, especially
Mass
on the
hysteria.
left. But I think that's the thing with the left, is the fact that everything is not individualized. It's everything is group. Collectivization, group identity is, so if you, it's all about putting people in groups. So they don't want to hear what you have to say as a person.
Yeah.
They want to immediately take what you say and put you in a group. And, but you know, I think.
And also what you say is a reflection on the group that you're a part of.
True. You know? Right. Or the group that they put you in, whether you identify in that group or not.
Well, it's like people saying like, shit, I lost my train of thought on this already. Man, this stuff is kicking in.
Yeah, it's kicking right in, even with the pizza. Well, I'm trying to think. We could continue down the train of wokeism in media, or we can transition to an article that I sent you last week, talking about what could happen if inflation continues to grow. I know we definitely should go to the article because everybody talks about the left and entertainment. The left and wokeism.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that might be still a good conversation to have.
We should get a woke leftist in here.
Yeah, I think it would be interesting. Not necessarily, because I don't think a woke leftist would come on. Well, I don't know. We Love the State might be very appealing to some woke leftists.
Ooh, yeah. We just lie to them.
Yeah, yeah.
Get them in here.
Hey, check out our logo. We're on your team.
We love the state.
We love the state. They're always looking out for our best interest. Yeah.
I'll just call and be like, we're gay. We're super gay.
We're gay dwarves.
If my wife walks in, I'll be like, that's my sister. That's my sister's kids.
I identify as a black gay dwarf. That could be a very interesting podcast.
Only I'm allowed to say shorty.
Yeah. You are only allowed to refer to me as vertically challenged, and that's only when you're not making eye contact. So something absolutely ridiculous. So anyhow, one thing I want to talk about today was an article that I kind of found through a YouTube channel. It's an article from Zero Hedge. called Central Banks Need to Be Targeting Megawatt Hours and Tons of Production Soviet Style, Not Inflation.
When he says tons, he means like literal tons.
Yeah, actual
Metric tons.
weight of production. And I never really thought that this would ever be in the lexicon of even the left in media, because there is such a negative connotation with Soviet. Mm-hmm. So it is kind of funny how we're very anti-Russia, very anti-Putin, and yet here we are looking at the Soviet Union as at least a potential way to combat inflation.
Yeah.
I think this is a interesting perspective that I have not heard a lot of in our circle of libertarians, the circle of podcasts that I listen to. And I kind of wanted to talk about it because I think this could happen.
Yeah.
And I don't want to, I as much as I am a big fan of Peter Schiff and his, lot of kind of maybe a little bit on the side of doomsday, like a lot of it is doom and gloom. Mm-hmm. If anybody goes to the grocery store and looks at the receipt, you're kind of seeing doom and gloom.
You're feeling pretty gloomy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pretty regularly. Mm-hmm. If you're in Europe and you're looking at like gas prices coming into the fall and winter, and you're looking at a potential, $200 USD a month in just utility bills, if not more. Yeah. You're thinking a little doom and gloom. Yeah. So it's not, it's definitely worth pursuing. So the article is titled, I think I already said, but it's of Michael Every, and it's it really kind of breaks down the idea that if the U.S. government, and I think they're talking, looking at more of the European Central Bank, potentially adopting policies like this. And I think it would be harder to do in Europe because you still have a lot of national pride in specific countries. Yeah. If the European Central Bank was going to try to centrally plan the economy of multiple countries, that would be a hard sell. It would be a hard sell in the United States because we do have some identities in our individual states, but it's not like in Europe where the languages are completely different. Your traditions, architecture, like it is, and especially in countries that they've gone to war against each other. So, but it does talk about what inflation, the dangers of inflation, and looking at potential solutions to inflation. Yeah. So I'm not quite sure, I don't want to necessarily preach the choir on inflation because I think most people understand it's an unofficial tax. Yeah. It is a way for the government to make their debt less expensive at the same timing making all of our lives more expensive. Mm-hmm. But I don't think people quite understand that inflation is a way to take away money from the middle to lower classes and give that money to the government or those who are already wealthy. Yeah. So inflation benefits those who hold assets and who hold debt. Inflation kills people who live paycheck to paycheck. Yeah. Inflation usually shows up first in asset prices. Mm-hmm. So if we look back about, looking at the recovery from the 2008 financial crisis, the Federal Reserve kind of started pushing the gas pedal on, and they called it quantitative easing. Yeah. It was another way of saying we are going to cause inflation. Mm-hmm. So inflation used to mean, the definition is, we talk about even like a downturn of the economy is 2 consecutive quarters of negative GDP growth, and that is a recession. Yeah. They're now trying to change the definition of what a recession is. Mm-hmm. They've done this already in regards to what is inflation. The original definition of inflation is an expansion of the money supply. That is inflation. They changed that to mean inflation is the cost of goods increasing. They did that on purpose, because if you say it's the cost of goods increasing, then it's not the government's fault or the Federal Reserve's fault. It's the business that is producing the goods. Now you can blame private business, and you don't have to talk about expanding the money supply. So it's all about changing definition. This is 1984 Orwellian
Marxism.
It really takes something we say the sky is blue, and they're like, now it's purple. And you just now all of a sudden we say, man, what a beautiful purple sky. And, originally you're like, no, this is stupid. But when everybody says the sky's purple, sky's purple.
Yeah.
And so originally the Federal Reserve was created to stabilize the markets, and there was the dual mandate they talk about. It is price stability and keeping unemployment low. So price stability meant no drastic swings in prices up or down. They kind of moved the goalpost on that definition little by little. So I believe it was originally the 2% was a ceiling. And I don't know if that was around the 70s and 80s when, we had that issue. But the idea was we need to keep inflation under 2%. And then probably, I think it was about 2 years ago, they changed the definition again. They said, well, we actually want an average of 2% inflation, because inflation's good, deflation is bad.
Yeah.
Which I don't think people quite understand. When they say that, they're talking about for the rich. They're not talking about for the general public. For the rich, inflation is good, even a small amount, because it means their asset prices go up and their debt goes down. But for the middle class and the poor, inflation is not good. And we've bought into the lie that deflation is dangerous and inflation is good.
Yeah.
So now all of a sudden the lie is becoming a little bit more transparent, right? Because we're way above 2% now.
Yeah.
But even at 2%, I mean, I know for myself, especially in healthcare, generally raises are around 3% every year. And so even a 2% inflation means that I'm only getting a 1% raise.
Yeah.
And like everybody out there should be, even at 2%, should be like upset. That is the government stealing 2% of your money. They're stealing that. And now we are way above the 2% inflation mark. And anybody who pays attention to the stock market after the announcement of August inflation numbers, because it went up, and they were expecting it to go down because gas prices have gone down. So the fact that it went up, kind of shot everybody's idea that, we've reached peak inflation. I mean, because they say that every month we've reached peak inflation, and now it's still going up. So what this article talks about is a way to deal with inflation, again, with the assumption that inflation is caused by greedy capitalist businesses gouging consumers.
Yeah.
That's how our government is trying to define inflation, and I think in some ways it was how the Soviet Union tried to paint the greedy owners of businesses and farms as gouging the consumer. So it's a way to make an enemy. It's kind of like a magician. Like, look at what's happening in my right hand, because I'm going to be doing something very mischievous in my left.
Yeah.
So what this article talks about is the way to address inflation is to adopt a command style economy. Which you're like, command style economy. What, that sounds interesting. What does that mean? Well, it basically means that the Federal Reserve and or the federal government, probably giving the power to the Federal Reserve because of its dual mandate, saying, well, you're supposed to keep prices down and you're supposed to keep unemployment down as well, or prices stable. So there is, at least in this article, there are people that are pushing for the Federal Reserve to have the power to dictate what consumers, the amount of widgets, I'm just going to call widgets because I think that's, something we can say across the board, whether you're making lawn chairs, or you're making t-shirts, or you're providing healthcare. The Federal Reserve will be able to dictate the cost of that widget and the amount of widgets you produce as an owner of a company. So if I am an owner of a company that makes lawn chairs, instead of producing to what the market needs. So
now you have to, they're going to dictate, you can only sell to people with lawns of a certain size.
Well, I think it's more about the fact that they think only 50% of Americans really need lawn chairs because they only, 40% of Americans have more than a half an acre. So they can tie the acreage to lawn chair development to production of lawn chairs. And so if I'm a company and I'm going to flood the market with lawn chairs, which means the price of lawn chairs is going to be reduced because I found a way to make them super cheap, and the Federal Reserve is going to say, no, you can't do that because that's going to cause deflation. And deflation is a horrible thing according to the Federal Reserve. So they're going to say, we're going to cap how many lawn chairs you can create at this price. Now, they may start with just volume and then let the market determine price, or they may actually say, here's the cap on volume and here's your cap on price.
Well, it sounds like this is already happening in farming in the United States, because
with subsidies.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the government will just flat out tell farmers, no, you have to destroy the rest of your crops.
Yeah.
If you don't do it, then you get fined, or you're not allowed to plant for the next season. And if you do it, you get a chunk of change, Yeah.
So, it's very similar to how the oil cartels, they decide how much oil can be refined. So it is again, and I know you and I have talked about the fact that we don't live in a capitalistic market. We haven't in a long time.
Yeah.
We have adopted fascism. I think a lot of governments saw what fascism did for Germany specifically, because originally the German economy was devastated. I mean, bushels of Deutschmarks for a loaf of bread. I mean, and Hitler was able to take fascism and turn that country around in a matter of a few years from third world to leading power. And I think a lot of governments looked at that playbook and was like, ooh, we like what that looks like.
They like the power.
Yeah. Because
dude, that's fucking terrifying.
It really is.
It's fucking terrifying that they're looking at, allegedly, that they're looking at fucking Hitler's playbook and saying yeah, but we'll do it the right way.
But it's the same thing with communism. A lot of people will say, well, it's never been done correctly.
Yeah.
And if we do, a socialism with a democracy where you elect your dictator, or then it takes away the bad part and it just leaves the good part.
So I love that sentiment of well, true communism has never actually been tried. Okay, well, let's look at the light bulb. How many attempts to create a light bulb was there? were like hundreds, weren't there? Like Thomas Edison had like 400 different prototypes before he finally got the one that worked or something like that. I could be getting that number way wrong. But let's say that this light bulb is communism. Okay. Whenever he tried one of these prototypes, it didn't work. It just blinked out, you know? And so he kept trying and trying and trying. But I bet you if he tried that first time and 100 million people died from that first prototype,
I'm done with light bulbs.
yeah, I guess candles forever.
Yep. That would be my perception. It's just fascinating, especially when, I mean, I encourage anybody listening or watching right now to try to find what fascism is. Mm-hmm. It is hard. Mm-hmm. It is hard.
I thought fascists were straight white males.
The way that we want to pursue fascism today is racism. Mm. But that's not fascism. Mm-hmm. That's Nazism.
Okay.
Like, there is a difference between fascism and Nazism. Fascism was adopted in Italy under Mussolini. Mm-hmm. It was adopted by Hitler in Germany. Mm-hmm. It was adopted by Franco in Spain. So fascism is not, it is a way of governance. And at its core, it is a partnership between government and business. Mm-hmm. So the government has a lot of control over the production, but businesses are allowed to be privately owned and operated. Mm-hmm. So the government usually uses regulations as a means to control business. Does that sound familiar to anybody living in the United States? Like, I mean, you can't open a lemonade stand without the police stopping by and saying, "Where's your, where's your
lemonade?
Let me see.
Where's your certificate from the Chamber of Commerce or whatever."
Right. And whether you're cutting hair or selling flowers or going fishing, mm-hmm. you need the government's permission. That is fascism. Mm-hmm. So we are living in we call it an elective democracy, but we're electing. I mean, they're pretty much, especially when it comes to the unelected people.
Yeah.
We live in a fascist government. Like, this is Adolf Hitler's dream.
Wow.
We are Adolf Hitler's wet dream. So hacky sack that.
We just found the title of the episode. Adolf Hitler's wet dream.
And it's crazy because it's not just the United States that's adopted this. Mm-hmm. I think it's there is a degree across the entire. I mean, very few governments anywhere in the world are functioning as a republic for sure. I think that's dead and gone. Mm-hmm. But even a democracy is a guise for the day-to-day citizens to feel like they have a voice in their fascist government.
Wow.
Like, Hitler was elected. Mm-hmm. And so because he was elected by the majority of people, that legitimizes what he wants to do, mm-hmm. right? Because that's democracy. 51% say yes. Mm-hmm. Fuck the 49.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what we have. And so this, this article that talks about a command economy is almost that next step in fascism. Mm-hmm. I mean, we already have a completely regulated and controlled economy by the state and businesses. Like, when a regulation is pushed forward, it's usually because a large corporation wants to prevent competition. Mm-hmm. And so they introduce a bill, or they push for a bill that makes it harder for competition to enter the marketplace.
Yeah.
And they use the guise of it's safe, it's safety, it's quality for the consumer. And that's why we need this regulation. But in reality, it is, I don't want competition. I can afford the regulations because I already own the business. Mm-hmm. But the people who are going to try to start up They can't. So it's a barrier to entry, right? So it's the Walmarts, the Amazons, they can deal with the regulation. So it's a perfect example of that private partnership with government. So it's a corporation that says, I don't want the competition, so I will bow to government oversight as long as I don't have to compete. So I get to rake in profits as long as I sell my soul to the government to decide who can play in the space, right? Yeah. So this article talks about a command economy. So when you hear command economy, I want people to understand that means a controlled, centrally planned economy. So that means that whether it is setting prices or setting quotas, the government decides. So it is kind of that next evolution in a fascist economy. So right now we have an economy where there is a barrier to entry because of regulations, but we don't have a command economy where the government actually gets to decide how many widgets you make and at what cost you can sell them.
Yeah.
The scary thing is that inflation may give them the cover to move to this next step. So, you know, I know that, you know, inflation, we are just starting to feel the pain of the inflation that was put forward in 2008. Inflation it takes a while to hit consumer goods. You know, first time it hits is asset prices. Like you look at quantitative easing when it started in 2008 and you look at the stock market, pretty easy parallel. Quantitative easing and the stock market, they both went up at the same time.
Yeah.
Now we are starting to see inflation in consumer goods. And that's going to start hurting people. I mean, your retirement fund isn't looking so good anymore. I mean, most people, I think, can see that.
Yeah.
But now it's not just your, like, because that was 2008. You're like, I mean, I know I lost ridiculous amount of money in my 401k retirement fund, but I didn't see the spike at the grocery store.
Yeah.
So yeah, it sucked for my retirement, but like, I'll have a chance to earn that back. Now your retirement fund's being devaluated and you're paying out the ass for celery or whatever the hell you want at the grocery store. Like, I mean, we talked earlier, like a canned peas that used to cost 50 cents is now $1.20.
Yeah.
It's just insane amount of inflation.
Yeah.
So like there is nothing that
and like what I was saying before is, you know, because I know that in some people's minds, and maybe nobody listening to this, because I'm pretty fairly positive that all of our listeners are libertarian or libertarian leaning, you know, but I know that in some people's minds, the inflation deniers or whatever you want to call them, they think like, oh well, $1.20 for a can of peas. I mean, it's not that bad. But the thing is you have to extrapolate that for every grocery that you buy. Every item that you buy is feeling that same inflation, you know?
Well, it's like the liberals specifically, but anybody who championed the lockdowns, they were the ones who got to work from home.
Yeah.
Like they didn't lose their business. They didn't lose their livelihood.
Yeah.
So it didn't affect them. And so lockdown was beneficial to them because they didn't have to leave the house. You know, they could go to work drunk or in their pajamas or like that was good for them.
There was a whole subgenre of internet comedy born just from that, you know, in a way of almost like looking up to these, like there's a guy on TikTok where he's got millions of followers and all he does is he has a laptop. It's you know, these are gags, but he's got a laptop and he's on a Zoom meeting and he's got a green screen behind him and he's out doing other shit.
Right.
He's skiing. One time he was like bull riding or some shit like that. And they're funny.
They're hilarious.
You know? But it kind of goes to show like these are the people that it was benefiting.
But if you also are able to villainize a business or private ownership, so if I own a restaurant, I'm a bad guy because I make a profit.
Yeah.
And so if my restaurant goes out of business because of the pandemic, no loss.
Did you watch the documentary that the Mises Caucus put out about the lockdowns? Shit, I can't remember what it's called. It's on YouTube. But it was shit, I don't remember. But Angela McArdle was in it, and there were these restaurant owners, there were these private business owners where the government came in and were like, you have to shut down, and they were like, we can't. I can't keep my employees if I shut down. I'm going to have to fire everybody. I'm going to lose my business. And so they were just like, fuck it, we're going to stay open. And they did. And like health department people came in and were like, you're putting people at risk. And they were making threats and just wild stuff. And it kind of showed what these people went through. And some of these people, like, they didn't make it through to the other side, and it's just, it's sad.
Yeah, I'm just kind of trying to look it up right now. As soon as we do find it, we can like link it into the show notes page.
Yeah. Good idea.
That would be something I would love to listen to or watch as well. But like, people don't understand like the insidiousness of what inflation actually is. And inflation is an expansion of the money supply. And we look at the last 2 years, and what is it, like 40% of all US dollars created happened in the last 2 years.
Yeah.
That is inflation. Like, so if, the government to try to say this is Putin's price hike.
And the government is that does not mean that the government went and burned 40% of the dollars that were already in circulation.
Right. This is creation out there on top of
it, printing $6 trillion. But every dime that we sent to fucking Ukraine, because here's one thing. Total aid that we've sent to Ukraine is like,
I want to say it's close to 60 billion.
Yeah, it's around 60 billion, but the actual number is more than that, because basically the United States federal government gave money to weapons manufacturers like Raytheon, Boeing, and all those companies, gave them money.
Well, what we did
to send shit to Ukraine.
Well, from what I understand is we actually sold a lot of the stockpiles we had to Ukraine. Or we gave it to Ukraine.
Yeah.
And then we're now using that 40 billion to pay Raytheon, Lockheed, etc., to replenish our own stockpiles.
Wow.
So
that's fucking wild.
It's a way to get rid of our old shit that we've been just building massive, because like there's a lot of times where the president will say, I want a Pentagon budget of 70 billion, whatever it is. And then the Congress will pass 85 billion budget for the Pentagon, like way over what the president actually even asked for, which it's so stupid that the president is the one asking for that anyhow, or like creating those kind of budgets. And then the Congress then it's just such a distorted, horrible way of killing our republic. But yeah, it's a way of like getting rid of our overstock, and then we basically take that money and just pay Raytheon. Like, I can't remember. I think this was probably
they're buying shit at pre-inflation prices, because the inflation doesn't happen until that money gets into the system. Into circulation.
Right. But I think even Bill Maher in that latest video, where he talks about a lot of problems with, I think specifically the liberals and the woke agenda, but he does touch on a little bit on the military spending, and can't remember if it's the F-16 Tomcat or what airplane that was supposed to be like the new generation has been such a boondoggle.
Yeah.
And we have spent trillions on this plane, and that still doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that's exactly what the military industrial complex wants, is failure.
Yeah.
Because failure breeds more money.
Yeah.
And that's just like if I hired a plumber and every time they came and said, "Yep, fix the pipe," and it's leaking again, and I kept having to pay them, any common person would be like, "This is ridiculous. Go find another plumber." But if the only plumber that fixes this pipe is Lockheed Martin, and they like, it's a boondoggle, and it's clearly it's a way to funnel money. You know, I mean, I think Biden wasn't that long ago where he gave a big speech at Lockheed at their production plant. And it's like, that was an advertisement for the military industrial complex. That's all it was.
Oh yeah, for sure.
So kind of, looking back at inflation. So the Federal Reserve has been slowly upping interest rates. I think what's crazy is the last time I checked on new mortgage rates, we're close to 6% now. So the real estate market is in the decline, if not like swirling around the toilet. Like, it's going to crash very soon.
Yeah.
Because we already have inflated prices, which are coming down a little bit, but they're not coming down fast enough to compensate for the increase in interest rates.
Yeah.
So what happens when, I think everybody, whether you believe on that, 2 quarters of negative GDP growth or not, but like, I think everybody understands we are at the beginning of a recession, right?
Yeah.
What happens when it takes on full steam, right? So is the Federal Reserve going to allow the markets to tank, the businesses to collapse, the bankruptcies to occur, which is a natural process for the bubble they blew up? Like, that's what every boom and bust cycle happens because the Federal Reserve pumped up bubbles in the marketplace, and those bubbles pop, right? So traditionally, when the bubbles pop, Federal Reserve goes to lower interest rates, and then they pump market money into the economy to try to stabilize. That's a Band-Aid to fix the wound they caused.
Yeah.
We talk about this a lot in the Libertarian Party, where the government breaks your leg and then hands you a crutch and says, "You're welcome." Right? And that's what this is right now. Like, the Federal Reserve dumped trillions and trillions of dollars in the economy. Now prices are now responding to all that extra money, and their response is potentially a command economy. And that's their way of fixing a problem that they created with more control over everything.
So how do you see this playing out? Like, 'cause this is always the thing that I'm interested in, and maybe this because I'm like a pastor's kid, and so I can't tell you how many fire and brimstone, like Revelations, end of the world apocalypse sermons I heard.
Right.
My dad wasn't really like a doomsday preacher, but like he would get into Revelations and talk about stuff like that, but it's always intriguing to me, but what's the, like, how do you see this playing out? Do you think there's a white pill to all this?
I do. All right. So how I see this playing out is, I don't know if this whole planned economy idea will work, in that I see some states seeing that as a bridge too far. All right. So if the solution to inflation is giving the Federal Reserve the power to dictate prices and or production quotas, and maybe it starts with production quotas, I think that may be the straw that breaks the camel's back. I think national divorce is inevitable. And I think it's actually the white pill. I think it's the best case scenario.
Okay, yeah, I agree with that.
Now, if you live in California and you are a freedom lover, it's a black pill. But if you live in a state like a New Hampshire or a Texas or a Florida, it may be more of a white pill. Now, I mean, those are Republican governors, and so I look at the power of the state as the ring of power, right? And I think everybody's seen those memes
we're coming full circle now.
See how I tied that back? Look at that. Like a pro. The libertarians are all about just throw it in the fire and destroy it.
Yeah.
But that's not, honestly, it's not, I don't think it's all libertarians. I think there are Justin Moshes. There are people who
Definitely
say
all like ANCAPs.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that there are people that would say if we only had the ring, we would use it for good.
Yeah.
Right? And that's, I think, 99.9% of voting Republicans. If we had control of the FBI, it wouldn't do like unsanctioned raids on political opponents. Like we would reform it. The Pentagon, the military, like if we had the ring, we would use it for good, right?
Did you see the TikTok I made about reform?
Was it recent? I saw the
It was a few weeks ago. So this guy, you know, it's me talking to myself like fucking 99% of TikToks. But you
talking to your twin, not yourself.
Right, my twin.
Your twin.
There's not a lot of continuity there. Like, there's some versions where I'm a roommate. There's other versions where I am myself,
from a different perspective.
Yeah.
A stupid perspective.
Yeah. So the lore is very loose.
It's loose lore.
Not consistent. But it's one of me is like, hi, I'm a random government agency. And the other person's like, hi, I'm just your average American everyday guy, and the government agency guy's like, can you come here real quick? Wow. Punches him in the balls. The guy's like, what the hell? You just punched me right in the balls. He's like, yep, that's what we do. And he's like, why would you do that? It's like, well, if we don't, the terrorists win.
I got a spell for you.
Well, he's like, why would you do that? He's like, well, if we don't, the terrorists win. He's like, well, have you ever thought of just not punching people in the balls? He goes, no. What if we reformed ourselves though? And he's like, wait, so you're going to stop punching people in the balls? And he's like, no, we're still going to do that. But when we do, it'll be reformed.
Yeah. You'll get to say who gets punched in the balls.
Right.
Right. Like that's what it all comes down to, is the power of the state and who gets to control that power.
Well, here's where I want to put a lot of fucking responsibility on Republicans, because a lot of them are talking a big game about the FBI ever since Mar-a-Lago got raided. But man, put your fucking money where your mouth is, dudes. Because if Trump gets elected and he doesn't abolish the FBI, fucking sell him down the river, man.
Yeah, and he won't.
He won't. Of course he won't. But here's
just like Julian Assange. Like he said, like the WikiLeaks exposed all those emails from the Democratic Party about how they screwed over Bernie Sanders, and it was clearly picked regardless of who wanted Hillary to be the nominee.
Yeah.
And did he do anything?
No,
for
he didn't
Julian
do
Assange?
anything for Julian Assange.
Nothing.
Didn't do anything for Edward Snowden. Didn't do anything for Chelsea Manning. Didn't do anything for Ross Ulbricht.
Yeah, that he was the dorky kid who was invited to some parties, but then all of a sudden he got to be prom king.
Yeah.
And so it was all about getting the publicity and the name recognition that he always wanted.
Yeah.
It's just, he got to wield the ring of power, and he didn't do shit.
Yeah. Well, and I know the excuse that Trump supporters are going to have.
He didn't start any new wars.
He didn't start any new wars, but also is like, well, it's his first term, and he's trying to get reelected.
And the deep state is very powerful, and it takes more than one term to drain the swamp.
If he gets elected in 2024,
and then he appoints, John Bolton again, or
yeah, like if he gets elected in 2024 and he does exactly what he did between 2016 and 2020, which is put garbage people in high positions of power and not touch any of these criminal 3-letter agencies and not set any of these fucking innocent people free, then are you still gonna bend over and suck his dick?
Right. He gave the swamp cocaine.
Yeah.
That's what he did. Like, he just was like, oh, here's some powder for your nose, and to make you even strong. Like, he drain shit.
He drained the swamp by replacing it with an entirily different swamp.
Yeah, another swamp. What? Not even different swamp. I mean, he reinstituted like people under Obama. He brought them back
the water a little bit.
Yeah, he peed in the water a little bit. I think that's what he did. I peed in the swamp. Now it tastes like me, so thank you. You're welcome. Like, that's Donald Trump.
Gold.
I peed gold into the swamp, and now you're welcome. And it's a joke because he had potential. Like, when I remember when he was running on the anti-war, getting, pulling out of the not the European Union, what is it? It's on the tip of my tongue.
NATO?
Yeah. He was like, why are we funding NATO? Like, everybody should be paying their fair share.
Yeah.
Yeah, I totally agree with it. Like, NATO was meant to be a bulwark against the Soviet Union expanding.
Yeah.
They collapsed, and NATO is now pushing,
a command economy.
Yeah. Well, they're not only that, but they're, they want.
I guess it's not NATO; it's the European Union.
But I think they want conflict because it justifies their existence.
Yeah.
Because like any government agency, they need justification for their existence.
Let's talk about Waco.
Yeah. I mean, all of the above. Like, it is crazy how many 3-letter agencies have come and been developed and expanded since the Patriot Act.
The ATF had to justify their budget, and it was right before Waco happened. And it was all televised, and it was all video evidence of this is why we need such an over-bloated budget, because, I mean, there's crazy people like the Branch Davidians out there. Who's going to take care of the Branch Davidians?
Well, I just read, and I can't remember where, so don't hold my feet to the fire, but the Pentagon is used to be required to produce, I think, like a year-end document of like all the money they spent, what it went to. Mm-hmm. They are no longer providing that report. And clearly it's because of all the money that's being funneled to Ukraine, and we have no idea where it's going. Like, those weapons, there's a lot of people that are saying that those are just being turned around and sold on the markets for
the next 9/11. The next 9/11 is going to be Ukrainian terrorists.
Is who we like. That's a Dave Smith quote. Like, you want to know who's our next war on? It's the people we're funding today.
Yep.
So kind of, again, back to inflation, like, there is nothing more powerful as an excuse to expand government power and overreach than fear. Mm-hmm. And this is the kind of like fear I think that everybody feels is I can't make ends meet anymore. Mm-hmm. So people are so conditioned to look to the government for answers. And that's whether the government caused the problem. I mean, that's people don't understand. It's the government that caused the problem. So to look for them for a solution, you're an idiot.
Yeah.
Like, you don't understand how ridiculous you are.
Yeah.
Because if you buy into the propaganda of that it's the businesses that are just gouging customers or it's Putin's fault, like the ruble has just better than ever. So all of the things that we're doing to hurt ourselves right now is helping Putin. And what are we doing? Continuing to hurt ourselves to try to spite. Like it's ridiculous. And you kind of have to wonder, like, and again, you know, back onto the tinfoil hat conspiracy theory, like, is this on purpose? Because it's obvious that what we're doing is hurting ourselves or hurting us. So why are we continuing to do it? Well, what's the end goal? Well, my opinion is we needed, because the economy in the recession and everything is going to shit, like the federal government needed somebody to blame. So to elongate the war in Ukraine, because there has been like documented evidence that Boris Johnson of the UK met with Zelensky and who was telling Boris, like, I'm going to the negotiation table. I need to end this war. And Boris Johnson said, if you do, you're cut off from any aid from the European Union or America.
Wow.
This was just recently published that says the war was continued because of a conversation between Zelensky and Boris Johnson.
Wow.
So they're actively supporting war and death on both sides, whether it's, if you are pro Ukraine and you are actively like, no negotiation, no peace, you're supporting killing women and children and innocents.
Yeah.
Like that's what you're doing. You are supporting murder. And so all of you people who like have your Ukrainian flag on your Facebook or the flag flying outside your house, you are supporting the death of the Ukraine. Like that's what you are actively supporting their death. And you're doing it so that the weapon manufacturers get rich and the politicians have a bad guy to blame for the shit they created. Like that is what is happening. So you need to understand that you're being sold a load of goods so the rich can get richer and the poor can be killed off. And you have a scapegoat for failed government policies. So again, the fear is a potential next step is a command economy. And in that scenario, whether it's the Federal Reserve or the federal government that starts dictating quantities of items that can be produced and or the prices they can be sold at, if that comes to fruition and maybe that is the end goal, because we do look at the situation right now and we're like, what's clear, we are causing this to ourselves, without a doubt. The Union, but all of the governments in Europe. It's crazy to think of how many people are going to starve or freeze to death this winter because we are making Russia richer. Like that's what we're doing. Yeah. We are making the ruble stronger. They're shipping all of their gas to China and India, and they are profiting. They're raking in record profits while their citizens are going to die. And then you add on top of that this whole like push for the Green New Deal across the globe of reducing, fertilizers for farmers so that they can't grow as much anymore, or they foreclose on their property because they can't make a profit. So then the big farming conglomerates can then buy it up on the cheap because that's what it really comes down to. Yeah. It's just a way to move the money from those in the middle class to the rich.
Do you ever get the feeling, this is drunk Andy talking, by the way. Do you ever get the feeling that we are living in a time that like our grandchildren are going to read about and be like,
Every
wow,
day.
that's fucking crazy.
Every day.
Wow.
That is what is crazy about the time we live in right now is we are living in our children and grandchildren's history, and they will remember this time.
Yeah.
They will see, I mean, it's kind of how we look back at the fall of the Soviet Union. They overextended themselves in Afghanistan. They spent way too much.
Watch the movie The Beast.
And then they had the issue with Chernobyl and Pripyat, and like that, what we look back and say, all right, that was the start of the end of the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
I guarantee you our children and grandchildren will look back at the miserable fuck up in Afghanistan and Iraq and Somalia and Yemen and Libya and Syria and all the places we have been dropping bombs in over the last 10 years, and say, on top of that, you know, all the quantitative easing, all of the money being spent, and they're going to say, you know, again, history's written by the victors, and so I think they will probably have a spin on this depending on how things play out. But I personally see the United States is extremely divided, and whether you get a Trump in 2024 or a Biden or a Kamala Harris, it's like the divisiveness is going to continue to amplify. So what does that natural progression look like? It looks like eventually, especially I think as the dollar continues to be devaluated, and as the rest of the world starts moving into other currencies, and away from the dollar as a reserve currency. I mean, we're already seeing that between Russia and China, and once they say, all right, we don't need the dollar anymore, all the reserves that they are sitting on in dollars that they don't need, they're going to flood the market with. What do you think that's going to do to inflation? Like, we are only we're scratching the top of what inflation looks like. And you can, when you see hyperinflation start setting in, where the reported inflation numbers are double digits and the real inflation numbers are double that, you are going to see pressure on the individual states to say, get out of this. Get out. And it's only going to take...
That is a hell of a white pill.
It's only going to take one.
Yep.
And then I think you're going to start seeing the domino effect.
Who do you think is going to be first, Texas or
I think
Florida?
it's going to be Texas.
Yeah.
And I say that because...
They've been itching to do that.
They've been itching to do it for a long time.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, if Trump gets reelected in 2024, I think California, and you could see somebody like Gavin Newsom being like, I get to be president of my own country.
Yeah.
You could see a Democratic state like Florida or like California actually secede.
Yeah.
And potentially
it'll start with California, and then it'll go to Oregon, then Washington.
Yeah, you're going to see a Democratic succession. If Trump loses and you get another Biden or Kamala Harris, you're going to see potential Republican secessions.
This is where I can see, like, I realize there's two types of ANCAPs out there. There's probably a lot of types of ANCAPs or whatever. The two main ones that I see, at least in my comment sections on TikTok, is you have the ones that, in my opinion, no offense to any ANCAPs listening to this, I'm not trying to shit on you or anything, but in my opinion, the more reasonable ones are the ones that are like, let's try to not send this country down the shitter in flames. Let's try to stabilize it and then dismantle it, which I think is reasonable, because in
another time, it would be reasonable. If we were talking about 2005, 2006, totally a reasonable way of looking at things.
Yeah. Well, the reason I say that's reasonable is because I'm like, well, I mean, we both have kids, and I'm like, I don't want my kids to go through like a Great Depression, you know, like I don't want them to have to deal with dust bowls and shit like that. And, who knows if that's something like that'll happen again. But, I'm trying to avoid something like that.
Bread lines and
like that kind of state collapse. I'm not trying to put my kids through that, And then there's the other type of ANCAP that's like, I hope the worst fucking person gets elected just so it accelerates the fall of the state, you know?
And that's me.
Oh, really?
And it's me because I think if the collapse happens sooner, it's not going to be as severe.
Okay.
The longer we prolong the collapse, the worse the collapse is going to be.
It's like the tumor's getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Yeah, yeah.
So you might as well cut that shit out right now.
It's the same, like if you're in a heroin addict and like if you're just continuing to inject yourself until eventually your organs fail, I'd rather you have a kidney failure early on and to get off the heroin than wait for a complete system failure and you're dead.
Yeah.
Like, so I want it to end. I want it to happen sooner rather than later because I think later is going to make it worse. But living in a state like Michigan, it's a tough one because we vacillate between Republican and Democratic leadership. And there are, it still comes down to the ring of power.
Yeah.
So if you have somebody in a governor position, right, and the dollar is collapsing, Texas secedes, New Hampshire secedes, Florida secedes, and we have this, like, the dissolution of the United States. If Gretchen Whitmer is our governor, we're fucked.
Yeah.
Because she is going to say, we will never leave the United States. We are stronger together.
Yeah.
And our dollar is going to collapse and we will have bread lines and rationing and we're screwed, right? If we have a governor that says, we're done. We are going to create our own currency. We're going to peg it to the dollar or, God forbid, Bitcoin. Many of you out there would think that was a great idea. I do not, because it has no inherent value. But at least it might. There is a potential for a more stable currency if it's pegged to Bitcoin than it's pegged to the dollar. Obviously, I'd much prefer gold and silver. But I mean, if like Texas actually they moved all of their gold from the Federal Reserve in New York, and they moved it all back to Texas. So if they wanted to peg a Texas dollar to gold, I think they could do it.
Yeah.
And they could have a very flourishing and stable economy. I mean, they have ports. They have the size. They have the economic structure. Like a Florida or a Texas could be, they could be top 10 countries in the world if they were a standalone country.
They got cheap labor.
But Texas especially. Well, Florida to some degree. But like,
I was just talking about the Mexicans.
Well, yeah, right. So I was talking about the Cubans in Florida, but they actually have really good potential to stand alone as their own economy. Where a Michigan, that would be tough. If we had a very good governor and we said we are going to have a standalone economy with our own currency pegged to a non-depreciating asset, and we will kind of create a trade union with state A, B, C, and D, where we can export our fruit, because that's a big thing that we produce in Michigan. Fruit. We do have a pretty good agricultural, side of things. I mean, I think we could potentially stand alone, but I think we would have to have a very good trading partnership with some of the other states.
Yeah, for sure.
I think we could survive. I think it comes down to who's in the governor's chair. Yeah. And so that's where, kind of coming full circle back to the libertarian idea of like local ownership it's so important to have the government that's closest to you be realistic and honest and not just a sound piece for the federal government or for a party, right? And it's going to be very interesting to see how things play out, because I'm a little on the doom and gloom side of things.
Yeah.
But I think the end result's going to be positive if given the right circumstances. I just don't see, I don't know anybody who's out there and who've watched the Ray Dalio video of how, the rise and fall of countries, and we are on the decline. Mm-hmm. Like, once we were given the status of the reserve currency, mm-hmm. we immediately started to abuse it, and that was the beginning of the end.
Yeah.
Like, that happened under the Dutch guilder, the British pound. It was the beginning of the end. And we are on the tail end of the American empire.
Yeah.
And my only hope is that individual states will be able to survive the collapse. Very similar, not similar to how the Soviet Union collapsed, because I think most of the countries that pulled out of the Soviet Union still retained a lot of, we look at a lot of those countries. I mean, there are some Lithuania, Estonia, Latvia that are doing quite well, but there are others that are not. And that's going to happen to the United States. I mean, like New York, California, especially if it's, Trump gets reelected and they're like, fuck this, we're out. They already have a pretty heavy exodus right now. Mm-hmm. But if they secede, man, I can only imagine, they're just going to be left holding with a homeless population that probably is more than the people who own homes.
Yeah.
And that economy is not sustainable. Like, the tent cities continue to grow in California, mm-hmm. because they continue to push more money out. That's an advertisement for homeless to move to Florida or to California. That's not sustainable. They rely on that federal government to say, we'll bail you out. If that federal government's no longer there to bail them out, I think that's going to be a big reality check to say we don't, that may force them to actually reevaluate their policies, or maybe they try to double down and they're going to see, their currency or whatever currency they adopt be inflated away.
Yeah.
It just doesn't, economics, especially economics, basic economics principles, you can't distort them and think that there's not going to be any ramifications. It's like the water. You can try to dam it up, but if it rains or there's a flood, I don't care what kind of dam you created, especially if it's out of mud, it's going to collapse. Yeah. And you pump the United States full of currency and prices we're only seeing the start of inflation.
Yeah.
And because this inflation was created back in 2008. So we're starting to see 2008 inflation hit the marketplace of prices.
Wow.
We saw it hit.
So it's never going to end.
Not until, so the Federal Reserve is trying to raise the interest rates. So the idea behind that is less people borrowing, more people saving.
Yeah.
So they're hoping that will reduce inflation. They also said that they're going to stop supplying money to the federal government, mm-hmm. because they own all of these federal government bonds and treasuries. And the federal government has all these bonds and treasuries that they want to sell. Traditionally, the Federal Reserve has been buying those. If they actually start trying to sell those, they're going to compete with the federal government, mm-hmm. on selling treasuries and bonds. Mm-hmm. So you have the Federal Reserve selling treasuries and bonds, and the federal government selling treasuries and bonds, mm-hmm. into a market where inflation is global and energy prices are through the roof. How many countries are going to want to buy our debt?
Yeah.
And if the Federal Reserve isn't buying our debt, the government grinds to a halt because they've been running on debt for years. Like, you would have to drastically cut government spending to the point where they can only spend what they bring in. Like, holy crap. That would be such a reduction in the size and scope of government. That would be like a libertarian's wet dream.
Yeah.
Not going to happen.
Maybe that should be the title of the episode.
A libertarian's wet dream.
Yeah.
It's not going to happen, right? So I call the Federal Reserve's bluff on this whole interest rate rising, and they're going to stop the quantitative easing and allowing the federal government to borrow from they claim to be an independent agency. They're not.
Yeah.
They do the behest of whatever the government wants them to do, and they will destroy the dollar if the federal government wants to continue to spend. So the message that everybody should hear from this is we're fucked.
That's the title of the episode.
We're fucked. We are the state and we are fucked. But if we can get the dick over sooner, it's going to make it a lot easier down the road.
Because that dick's getting bigger every single day.
It's going to keep getting bigger. You want an average sized dick in your butt. So get it over now.
Right now we're at
5 inches.
Yeah, we're at average white guy dick.
Yeah,
all
white
right?
guy dick.
We're about to cross over into white porn star dick.
Right. And it only goes uphill from there.
Yeah.
I was going to say downhill, but no, it's actually uphill, depending on your perspective, whether you're the dick owner or the dick receiver.
All right. Episode title: We are the state. No. Episode title: We love the state, and we are fucked.
And we are fucked.
I love it.
We love to get fucked by the state. No,
Some people do.
Some people think that that's how you're supposed to function, is just bend over and take it. And they think and a lot of times they say thank you, which is, I think, it could be up to 30 to 40% of the U.S. population.
Oh, yeah.
And that's, it's sad, it's scary, but hey, it's your butt. For me and my butt, I'd rather not get fucked.
As for me and my butt, we serve the Lord. Okay, so let's wrap this up. Ben, do you have any advice that you want to give to our listeners?
You need to prepare. All right. I'm not a big fan of like the prepper movement, but when we're talking inflation at where it's at and the fact that it's going to continue to grow, stockpile some goods. If you can find a deal on canned goods, like non-expirational, like I started buying a shit ton of canned goods last year.
Yeah.
Because I knew inflation was so if the dollar collapsed, I could feed my family.
Yeah.
If inflation got ridiculous, I could mitigate that grocery bill with the storage that I had at home.
Yeah.
So get your toilet paper, buy your Spam, buy your canned vegetables, buy your canned meats, because again, it doesn't matter the outcome, you're going to win in the end if you have a stockpile now. As far as investments goes, I'm a gold and silver bug, because I think precious metals, again, because they have intrinsic value. Like gold is used for a lot of things, whether it's jewelry, whether it's computer chips, whether it's like NASA with shielding. Like, it's going to be in demand whether the dollar collapses or not. So it's a safe bet.
Yeah.
So I'm a big fan of gold and silver. For those who are in the know, there are something called gold bucks or
Goldbacks.
Goldbacks.
Yeah.
So
I have 5 of those.
Goldbacks are something that is slowly
Ben gave me those, by the way.
They are slowly becoming more and more prevalent. I think they are accepted as currency in 4 or 5 states now.
Utah, New Hampshire,
Nevada, Wyoming.
In Wyoming. Yeah, I think so.
I think that's it. I'd love to get somebody from that team on the podcast.
Ooh, yeah.
I've reached out to them once. I need to follow up again. And some of the prerequisites is that gold and silver are recognized at the federal level as currency. Mm-hmm. But a lot of states actually tax them as I don't know if it's a commodity or as an investment. But that really limits their ability to be used as transaction.
I mean, how do you... I don't know. Well, I'll save that for if we ever get one of the goldback guys or ladies on here.
Yeah. If you're interested more, it's goldback.com. Mm-hmm. There's a wealth of information there. It's wealth, exactly. They're exchanging at a really good rate right now. Mm-hmm. I think it's $3.74 per one goldback right now. So it's a great opportunity to get in at a good price.
Yeah.
But there are many ways to use them, even if they're not accepted in your state as a way for, exchange, medium of exchange. But they're a way to hold on to your wealth in a form that can be used and exchanged.
Yeah.
A lot of times, silver bars, gold bars, coins.
Can't really take that to McDonald's.
Right. It's pretty cumbersome. It's not easy to store. This solves a lot of the problem with gold and silver storage. So goldbacks, I can't recommend them enough.
Mm-hmm. They're beautiful.
And they're beautiful. Yeah. The designing on them are
incredibly
beautiful.
Durable. They're beautiful.
Very durable. And it's a cool way of actually holding gold and hopefully being able to use gold.
The only downside to goldbacks is the wallet that you have to carry them in is huge.
Yeah. It's a man purse.
Yeah.
All
right. Well, I've got some advice. Very sound advice. If a hot chick comes up to you offering to buy you guns so you can kidnap the governor, don't do it. It's a trap.
It's a trap. That's Star Wars reference.
All right. Well, hey, let's get some plugs out of the way.
Oh, one thing I forgot to mention.
Oh, yeah.
Our merchandise is up.
Yeah.
So go to welovethestate.com. Mm-hmm. Click on the site navigator and see the merchandise section. We have men's and women's apparel in 2 logo designs.
We have fanny packs.
Yeah. We have face masks that state "We Love the State,"
which I find so hilariously ironic.
Irony is being like muffled by the state.
Yes.
At the same time as saying "We love the state."
Love the state.
Winner, chicken dinner.
Fuck yeah.
You need to get your hands on these, especially if you live in New York and in Los Angeles.
Yes.
So yeah, please check out welovethestate.com. Got a lot of information there, links to podcasts, and now we have a merch store.
Merchandise. Yeah, go buy some merch. It's cool shit. We paid good money for that logo. Anyway, if you want to follow me on TikTok, you can follow me at Andy Coons. That is Koons. I just did a promo video for my buddy's apparel company called Decido, which is DSYDO.com. He makes these badass political t-shirts, and I just got one. He sent me one that I did the TikTok promo for, and on the back of it has a black sideways American flag with a fighter jet on it, and it says "Normalize civilian-owned fighter jets."
We may have to adopt that with maybe some like Russian T-34 tanks.
Hell yeah. So anyway, check me out on TikTok. Check out that promo video. You can use promo code AndyTalk, ANDYTOK, on DSYDO.com. You can buy 2 shirts for $50. RJ, the owner, he said that's the best deal he's got right now. So go check that out. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it is at Andy_Coons, Koons. That's where I say a lot of shit that would get me banned off of TikTok. Ironically, I'm able to do it on Twitter. I don't know why that's a thing, but
for now,
yeah. I have a lot of fun on Twitter. Everybody hates Twitter. I fucking love Twitter.
I can't get it. I can't get into it.
It's my favorite garbage fire. We Love the State has a Facebook page. Join the Facebook page. We want to get a good community going there. We want to get people talking. We post memes on there. I'll post my TikToks on there. Yeah, if you want to drop a meme or something like that, go drop it on We Love the State. Yeah, let's have some fun. What you got, Ben?
You can follow me on Instagram. It is Picture This 1979. Please also follow We Love the State. That's also on Instagram. Facebook, you can always find me under Ben DeJong, DeJong. And again, check out our Instagram page, or excuse me, our Facebook page for We Love the State. We do have a membership group there. We'd love to see that grow. As we've gotten more and more into like growing the platform, as you know, when I started looking at Instagram, well, not Instagram, but the merchandise side of things, there is a kind of a wall to entrance. And so you need to have so many followers to be able to have access to more and more things, whether it's selling merchandise or creating groups.
You're talking about on
YouTube, on Instagram, and on Facebook. So to continue to build our audience and to continue to build our platform, we need subscribers and we need people who are liking and joining. So please drop us a like, please subscribe. That only helps us with our numbers and so we can continue to grow.
All right. Locals.
We are working on a locals channel. I think I have it up, but I haven't linked it all together.
Yeah.
So I'm hoping by our next podcast, we'll have a little bit more information on the locals side of things. We are looking at trying to develop some tiers for subscriber bases.
Yep. Starting at the low price of $250 a month.
Right. Not because of inflation, just because we're greedy.
Yeah. Yeah, we're greedy capitalists.
But we will have some benefits to subscribers. Yeah. So some ideas. I was
kidding about that $250.
Exactly.
Just in case.
We are throwing around.
Our audience is autistic. I gotta keep that in mind.
They're like, fuck this, guys. They have nothing to do with Soviet capital or Soviet communism. Capitalist motherfuckers. We are looking at like what do the tiers look like in a subscriber base methodology, whether it's you get a t-shirt at a certain level or potentially you get backdoor access.
Yep.
Which ties back to our
that's the $250 one.
Yeah.
Pay $250 a month, you get to fuck me and Ben.
Oh well, you get to fuck Andy.
Oh yeah.
I'm
the atheist with no morals.
I'll sell my co-podcaster out. But whether it's potentially you may actually be a guest on the podcast.
Oh yeah. So yeah, we've been talking about some of the different things we want to do for like some behind the paywall episodes, and one of those is like if you are a certain tier on the membership, then your name gets put in like a raffle for being a guest on the podcast, and that would be one of the behind the paywall ones. We also want to have some different discussions that it's not totally about politics that we think would be really cool for being behind the paywall, getting into religion.
Yeah. And continue to delve into comedy. I think last episode was awesome. Like I would love to take a lot of fun. Like that was very high level, but we could take that conversation in so many other directions. Yeah. And so I can't wait to expand on a comedy, because I think comedy is the canary in the coal mine. I think I may have stated that in the episode last week. But I think we can't overlook that. And I think that'd be great to continue to have as a topic of conversation.
Yeah. All right. Well, hey guys, thank you so much for listening. I was totally kidding about calling you guys autistic. I didn't mean that. I was talking about somebody else. I was talking about a different audience. I seriously though, our download numbers keep going up. They're going up slowly, but they are going up. And I have to give credit to you guys. That's because you guys are listening to us. You're sharing it. You're sharing our shit. You're talking about us. You're commenting. And every time you comment, like on a We Love the State post, your friends will see that. I guess depending on how you have your privacy settings, but still, like people see that you're getting the information out there. I really appreciate it. I know Ben really appreciates this. We've only been doing this. This is episode 14 or 15. I don't remember the numbers. And our numbers are not too bad for where we're at. And so, I cannot tell you how much I appreciate that. So if you're listening to this, thank you so much.
We love you all, and we can't wait to continue this conversation.
We love the state, and we are fucked.
Goodbye.